the Miami tuxedo, right? I mean. All right, I'm Red, Community Foreman of Harvest Finance, and I'm a nobody. So I kind of mean that in kind of two different categories. First, on the left here is I'm just some random on the internet. Like going back to the first page, that's my avatar there, a monkey smoking a cigar in a tuxedo, so very fitting, right? But a lot of these decentralized organizations, we do our business inside of like chat rooms, right? So generally you would never see my face. I'm just some random guy on the internet who's a chimp smoking a cigar. So I'm not defined by my ace, my race, my age, my gender. I'm none of these things that kind of affect like work environments today, right? So when I'm stripped of all these identifiers, I am what I contribute. And that's very important in the decentralized world, right? It's not about Satoshi anymore. It's about the community that's been built around Bitcoin and that whole entire network around it, right? So again, being a nobody in these decentralized organizations is incredibly important. But me personally, or the people that I'm speaking for, is I'm not a dev. So to a lot of people, I'm a nobody. Why should you even be listening to me right now? And no, I have no revolutionary idea to tokenize to get you rich. So again, how am I critical to this environment? Oh no, I just broke it. There we go. So I'm foundational to every project and every DAO. And you're like, well, how is that possible if you are not a developer? I am the community. So I am your protocol user. I am your customer, right? Like decentralized finance is relatively small, so the people that you have in your chat rooms yelling "Win Moon," we're ultimately your customers, right? We're your liquidity providers, your depositors. We're the ones that actually make your protocol run. And yes, we are your shitcoin holders. I say that very lovingly. I hold a bunch of shitcoins myself. If you have a shitcoin and you're kind of calling yourself a DAO, you probably have a governance token, so that means I'm also your governance voter. That's what makes you run, right, along with the liquidity. Ultimately, though, when we talk about DAOs, we talk about this governance voter, and that means, oh, I must be a DAO. If I have a token, that must mean I am a DAO. So let's kind of talk about that real quick. What is a DAO? A DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization, very straightforward. But ultimately, whenever you hear about DAOs within this space, it's all about voting, 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 right? That's ultimately what everybody thinks is important because voting probably directly impacts the code of the protocol. So there's this huge over-reliance of voting being like the end-all be-all in crypto and when it comes to decentralized autonomous organizations. Again, if you have a token, you must be a DAO, right? So does voting actually really equal DAO? But it's pretty well known within crypto and these DAOs, when they use tokens for voting, that there's these large concentrations of voters, basically a whale, token holders, a whale. And so I may come in with my 1,000 tokens and think, oh, I'm making my big contribution because I'm voting for this protocol, but somebody comes in with 5 million tokens and completely obliterates the point of my vote. But then you also have low overall participation, which means those whales are going to have even more influence. And then you also have market dynamics, right? Because the reality is a lot of the customers are shitcoin holders that are currently holding your token or the governance token. They're chasing it for the speculatory nature, not necessarily to participate in your environment. So George Harrop from Step Finance kind of jokingly tweets, you still going to want to govern your favorite DAO when it's down 90%? Right, so it kind of shows you, tongue-in-cheek, why probably voting isn't necessarily the best mechanism. And I kind of mentioned this before, voting only affects the protocol level. What about the rest of the organization, right? There's no V in DAO. DA, decentralized autonomous, that speaks to voting, but there's also another letter there, organization, right? A DAO isn't just about voting and the protocol. There's other things within your organization or that business is doing, marketing, treasury, customer service, all these various things that happen in a traditional business today. Yet, we're letting these organizations or projects that are launching essentially call themselves a DAO because they just have a token, while the same three guys are making all these centralized business decisions, again, the marketing or all these other things that greatly impact that protocol as well. So if you kind of ask the question, if JP Morgan or some big bad bank came along and launched on the blockchain, they simply said, oh, here's a governance token. You can make some decisions on this. Would you call that decentralized, or would you call that a DAO? No, you wouldn't, right? But we're allowing that to happen basically with these developers today. And that's kind of like what the point of this talk is we need to be very careful and understand there's more to decentralization than just voting. And then Andre Cronje kind of talks about it a little bit here, poking at DAOs a little bit and just the over-reliance of voting. So picture your government, it's kind of blurry. Now imagine if every policy had to be voted on by every citizen, and only if quorum was reached would it pass. How does that picture look? Basically you have like participation paralysis, right? Because you have nobody's really voting, or things aren't really passing. So he's saying this is what a DAO. Vote against the DAO because DAOs are bad because it's all about voting. So I want to jump forward here to Hester Pierce, known as Crypto Mom. Very friendly towards crypto, but she is the SEC commissioner. And these are some quotes of her directly talking about decentralizations and DAOs. So if you want to be decentralized, you really need to be decentralized. And that is then going to put you in a different category from the perspective of regulators, because that is not just something that we've dealt with before. If regulators can find a centralized part or group of people that they can grab a hold of, they will grab a hold of them. So I think it is good to be cautious about how you build things, because down the road, it could have regulatory implications. So talking directly to developers, if they can find you, they're going to come and get you, right? So it's extremely important that we don't just have these voting mechanisms as an idea of decentralization. You actually need to go above and beyond and work towards decentralizing the organization, right? The business operations should also be decentralized to protect the developers and help ensure the longevity of the protocol. So think of Bitcoin. People don't really think of Bitcoin as being a DAO because it's grown so large and grown so large and decentralized. They're outside of just like one chat room, right? There's no just one marketing guy. Like everybody who loves Bitcoin is now marketing, right? Everybody who loves Bitcoin is now the customer service and the documentation writer and a translator in their own language when they want to evangelize by Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin is like almost like the ultimate realization of a DAO, because it's become so decentralized, nobody knows who Satoshi is, and so many people are doing the marketing or everything in between. Who does the SEC go after? So ultimately, they have to play ball with Bitcoin. And so you should be considering that for your own organizations and protocols as you deploy them, that again, we can't just rely on these voting mechanisms and have these centralized decisions. What does this mean long term? Well, again, looking back at Bitcoin, Satoshi deployed the code when he felt he was ready, and then he took a step back away from it, and now it's in the hands of the community. So ultimately, long term, us nobodies in the community are actually greater or equal to than the impact than the protocol devs themselves, because not only are we your protocol users, liquidity providers, and your shitcoin holders, we're your security layer from regulation, right? If I'm just some random dude living on an island somewhere helping you run your Twitter account, how are they going to find me, right? When I'm shouting up 10,000%, buy, 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 right? I mean, that's obviously a SEC security violation. Don't do that. Your marketing team, your customer service, your networking, your collaborations, your alpha hunters. I mentioned translations before. We have like 25 different languages our documents are translated at Harvest Finance from randoms all over the internet who speak in those languages. Imagine trying to get that translated into traditional business, trying to find all the people that can do those languages and try to outsource that. And those people just appear at our doorstep out of like the love of the project. Collaborations and alpha hunters. I work in crypto and I can't keep up with stuff that happens like an hour from now, right? Like I've probably missed a million things just being attending at this conference, but there are people that aren't at this conference that are working away for the Harvest DAO, learning about all this alpha, bringing it to us on a day-to-day basis. Things that I couldn't do myself, but all of you are out there with this information flowing around and being a part of. You are what can make like Harvest specifically successful. And the new developers. I mean, I think even Vitalik himself said Ethereum's come way farther than what he initially envisioned, right? And that's because community developers came along and introduced concepts that he might not even himself have thought about. So daily operations managed by your community includes them in every facet of the organizational decision-making processes and eliminating the centralizations of decisions without the over-reliance on voting. So if your entire organization is basically community members, there's no need to vote because everybody's kind of already agreeance on everything that you're working on and working towards, right? So there's no need of these overweighted mechanisms or specifically on token holders. It's everybody who's grabbing a shovel, pitching in, really wanting the betterment of that protocol. They're already signaling to you their yes vote because they're working with you to implement those very things. When the price crash, going back to George's tweet, you still want to govern. People actually work harder when prices crash. I see devs say all the time on Twitter, oh, I love when the bear market comes because we go back to focus on developing and not price and not token moon. And again, when you're working in a community and it's not about some token and voting, you're actually doing work, people actually tend to work harder in those instances. Whoa. Voting is still very important, so I'm not trying to knock voting at all, but voting is just a tool, and it's actually secondary to the need of fulfilling operational roles with non-founding members of the protocol. So just jumping to Harvest Finance really quick, because this is actually, I've blown a couple of minds a few times when I've talked about Harvest Finance. So started by Anon Devs. I've been there a year, never met them. I literally have no idea who these guys are. I showed up week one, hey, this is a cool protocol. I want to learn how to use it. I started asking questions. 10 minutes later, someone in the chat asked the same question. 10 minutes after then, somebody asked the same question. I started answering them, became a chat moderator, and now I'm suddenly the guy speaking at conferences because these are Anon devs and they can't do it. But over the year that they've since existed, currently running with about $400 million in deposits, they've basically handed off 90% of all business operations to the point where they really only oversee code deployment to ensure safety. Again, I'm here making business decisions, trying to network. Our deal with Bancor was done completely by community members. Deployment of some new strategies out of South Korea was because of a community member out of South Korea. We may not have really heard about this project before, and they committed $1 million to liquidity rewards within our platform. So just all of these amazing things that we would have never heard of if it was just the same 5 guys deploying this protocol without the power of nobodies, right? So I think that is extremely powerful because everybody asks me, how do you get into crypto? How do you get into crypto? And it's just pick up a shovel and work. It's not about like me connecting you or hooking you up and the politics of things. It's show up and get the work done. And ultimately, at Harvest Finance, they are working towards full protocol decentralization, where like somebody could build their own website and it would hook up to all the Harvest Finance contracts. So for whatever reason, Harvest.finance got shut down. Well, Joe Blow's version of Harvest Finance would still be running, and it would still be running off the same safe contracts on the blockchain because it's connected to that code. And then just kind of wrapping up the idea, myself as an individual, I'm a nobody. I'm some dude without an idea. You could kind of brush me off like a drop of water. But when you pair all of us, nobodies together, right, we become like this big, decentralized organization that's kind of like an ocean, right? And the SEC said it themselves, like, if we can get you as individual droplets of water and identify who you are, they're going to come and get you, right? But how can the SEC stop the ocean? Thank you.
That's the answer.